All right. Let's start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Chakwaдаsh. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is No, the white man, so-called white man, is not Japheth. And pretty much this lesson is inspired by part of a video I was watching earlier. And I had sent it to a couple of brothers. And it was an individual by the name of Dante Fortson, which after a while that name started to sound familiar. I mean, I don't remember where I heard it from, so it prompted me to go and check his page. And when I checked his page, pretty much that particular page goes back to 2009. Because I was, going to make a statement of where was, this guy at 20 years ago. But, his page does go back all the way to 2009. Now, keep in mind that the Israelites started getting on YouTube around 2006. I'm talking about the One West Israelites. Roughly around 2006. And then we, at Great Millstone, got on YouTube. Not September, July, the middle of July 2007. And what you had was a lot of, once Great Millstone got on, through the spirit and power of Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, we pretty much revolutionized the Israelite thing on YouTube by just putting out video after video after video after video after video, beginning with Elder Apostle Tahar. And you started having a lot of different individuals watching Hebrew Israelite videos, and some of them were joining camps, some of them came in, fell out, others was in the background gathering information, using what they like, discarding the rest, and then starting their own platform. Now, one thing I noticed about this guy, Dante Fortson, when I went to his page, the video I was watching was, and that would be DANTE space FORTSON. That's his page. And when you go to his page and you look at the videos, where you around where the views are at, somewhere around there, it says shop. So he has a store, I guess, where you could shop online or whatever, however that works. And pretty much a lot of these guys are on here to make money. And they would not have known about this Hebrew Israelite thing had it not been for the One West camps, putting up videos and exposing the truth of who the true Hebrew Israelites are. Because you did have the Old Testament heads that believe that they're Israelites, but they don't go out on the streets. And they omit the New Testament. They don't acknowledge the Messiah because they're following those small hats. And that's pretty much how it started back in the days. The elders that were before High Priest Ariah, King Masha, High Priest Ariah, High Priest Yaquab, beginning with Elder Abba Bivens and others, they learned from the small hats. And as they continued to study, they found out that they were Israelites and, so on and so forth. And it began to be revolutionized. And then Elder Abba Bivens broke off, started his thing through the spirit and power of Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, gathered men at his deathbed, set up certain men to teach what you see now, the most famous, for lack of better words, Hebrew Israelite doctrine out there. Because you have the Old Testament heads that you don't hear nothing from them guys. So these individuals like Dante Fortson and others would have never heard about this truth had it not been for YouTube and had it not been for the One West camps. And a lot of these guys, they want to do their own thing because they don't want to follow any orders, because they have ulterior motives. They have their own agenda. They serve their own belly. Now he's saying that Now, what he is saying is that the small hats are not Israelites, which he is right about that. But he's saying that they're Japhet, from what I gather from the video. And he tried to use the scripture in Genesis where it says that Japheth, the Lord shall enlarge Japhet, and Japheth shall be in the tents of Shem or something like that. And I guess from what he was saying is that was an idea that they were pushing on the people. You could go and watch the video. Like I said, just go to the page. It's one of the maybe like the third video in there, because he has a series of videos now dealing with the small hats. And he's saying that them and pretty much Esau, which is the so-called white man, they saying that those are Japhet, and that's an old teaching going way back because of the area of Europe. They're saying that those so-called Europeans that are living there, they're Japhet, and they're not, because the people that lived there prior to them, the original Japhites, were brown-skinned people. All right. And another thing is that the scriptures, never spoke about Japhet doing any great things in the last days. There's nothing really, not much mention of Japhet in the scriptures, especially dealing prophetically. The major empire of Japhet that made any noise were the Medes, and they were pretty much absorbed into the Persian Empire. So that's why it was the Medo-Persian Empire. But it never spoke of any future prophecy. Oh, come on, man. I hope you ain't going to park there, man. Any future prophecy. Sure is. Fuck. Any future prophecies concerning Japhet. All right? So I just wanted to make mention of that. So when you get a chance, those of you that, studious brothers that wanna watch the video, then do so. But I just want to hit, first of all, go to the book of Obadiah, because you're not going to find any video. As a matter of fact, before I start with Obadiah, let's go to 2nd Ezra's, the 6th chapter, and the 7th verse. So it says, Then answered I and said, What shall be the parting asunder of the times? Or when shall be the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth? So basically, what the prophet Ezra was asking is, when is the end of the world going to come? And when is the kingdom going to be established, pretty much in so many words. And he said unto me, From Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. And, when you go back to Genesis 25, it breaks it down to you. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Right. So Esau is the end of the world. So Esau would be ruling at the end of the world, not Japhet. If it would have been Japhet, it would have said Japhet, is the end of the world. But it's saying that Esau is the end of the world. Now, when you look at that word world, in the Greek it's eon, in the Latin it's seculi, in the Hebrew it's iwalam, which means an uninterrupted rule, a certain time period. Now, it could be perpetual, or it could be, a time period, all right? Like the different empires with different ages that would rule. And the disciples asked Yahushua, what's going to be the signs of his coming and of the end of the world, meaning the end of the Roman Empire. Because they understood that once the Roman Empire would go down, the Israelites would be ruling. Yahushua would be ruling with the Israelites. But what they didn't understand was that there was still a 2,000-year period where, they would have to wait for the kingdom of heaven. They didn't understand that back then. But they did understand that once, because, Yahushua broke down a lot of things to the apostles, disciples, which they became apostles, but they didn't know everything, and the things that they spoke of back then, certain things they didn't understand that we understand today, because it's in these times where the end is coming and the kingdom is going to come. All right, so that's the point that we're at right now. So when we go to let's go to Obadiah now, and then I'll probably close it after that. Of course, this is a big topic, and I've done videos through the Spirit that were actually on and are still on Daily Motion, going back to 09, to where the Japhetic people were really brown-skinned people. When you go to the Etruscans, to name some of the more popular ones that I remember, there's a bunch of them, but there's a popular ones that I remember: the Etruscans, the Minoans, and the Picts. Picts, Picts, is a shortened form of pictorial. The pictorial people were named that by the Romans because of their tattoos. And when you look at the so-called, Samoans, the so-called Polynesian people, they're tatted up, so to speak. And that goes back to Japheth. All right, that's something that the scriptures don't speak about them being tatted up, but this is what the Romans called them. And then when you look at the Japhetic people, they are, not every tribe, but certain tribes of them, they have all those tattoos on them because that goes back to the Picts. Then you have the Minoan people, that there's still art, from those different islands, in the Mediterranean Sea, and the other different seas that are within that body of water, those islands, and you'll see pictures of them, relics that are left from Crete, I believe it was, the island of Crete, and you still see, brown-skinned people, brown-skinned men with long hair, and then you see their women that were painted as white, so you would think that some of them were brown, some of them were so-called white, but that's not the case. The reason why the women were portrayed as being white in those pictures is because when you had Minoan art, when you look at the men and the women, they look similar because they both wore the long hair, which goes back to those to the Greek customs, and they pretty much was not much of a distinction. The men didn't have much hair on their face, so how they distinguished the men from the women in art was by painting the women looking white. When you do the research, and when you go to I believe it's Minoan civilization or Minoan, and you go to Wikipedia, it breaks it down for you there. So that's how they have it. But those people, the original people of those lands, are brown-skinned people, not so-called white people. So in Obadiah, the first chapter, which is only one chapter long, I'll just read a couple of verses. Verse 1. The vision of Obadiah, thus said the Lord power concerning Edom. Edom, so-called white man. The word Edom goes back to the Hebrew word Adawam, which means red. And they are the actual red people, not the so-called Native American Indians. The reason why they call them red was because of the war paint that they would wear. Some of them would wear different colors, some of them would wear red. There were different colors for different tribes. I'm not an expert at that, so I don't know all of the mechanics behind that. But you had different colors for different tribes. All right, and that's why they call them the red man. They weren't red, they were brown-skinned men. All right, it says, we have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador sent among the heathen. Arise ye and let us rise up against her in battle. That goes back in history. But behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. Right, small meaning insignificant. And all nations hate these devils, especially them small hats. They're the most hated out of all of the Edomites because they're the most satanic, the most demonic, the most cold, the most You know, I mean, you name it. So the pride of thine heart has deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. And that's one, you know, that's one example or evidence that the so-called white men are the Edomites. Because they dwell in the clefts of the rocks, clefts of the rock, which is your so-called caves. All right? That's what they call Caucasian. Goddamn Satan is a motherfucker, boy. No matter where you go to somewhere secluded, nobody's around, and all of a sudden, all kind of crazy shit start happening. So, like, I'm just thinking out loud. But they are the original cavemen. That's why they call themselves Caucasian. Caucasians go back to the word Caucasus, which were the Caucasus Mountains. And in the Caucasus Mountains, at that time, during the time of the Khazar Empire, you know, and other times, you know, going back when the Dark Nations were ruling and Esau, before Esau really came into power, they were in those caves in a very low state to fulfill prophecy, the prophecy of Genesis. I believe that was 3:15 around there or so, you know, where they were brought to a very low state. The prophet Job spoke about the low condition that they were brought down to. You know, they were a bunch of thieves. They were run out from among society, civilization. Then, you know, they pretty much didn't even speak to each other. They would grunt. You know, they would bray. They would, you know, they became like beasts. So you get a somewhat of an understanding of that. You could just go and read the book of Daniel, where the Lord brought Nebuchadnezzar down to the level of a beast. You know, it didn't get specific into everything that he did, but he became like a beast. His mind was taken away, his understanding was taken away, you know, and who knows, he probably was grunting, you know, he probably was making all kind of beastly noises. That's how Esau was in those caves. It says, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high. And when you look at their habitation now, when you look at it back then, in Petra, or the land of Edom, Mount Seir, it was high, but when you look at them now, that altitude or that height goes into their skyscrapers, you know. And it's no coincidence, because people say, well, Chinese have skyscrapers, Japanese have skyscrapers, you know. When you go to Dubai, they got yeah, but where did they get the skyscrapers from? They got it from Esau. The very first skyscraper was 10 stories high. It was an insurance company in Chicago. And that was the very first time that a building was built that high. And from that point on, that gave Esau the ability or the go-ahead to build, you know, high buildings, what they call skyscrapers, or in Spanish, rascacielos, which is a skyscraper. It says, and saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Because they're very pompous. You know, even to this very day, they puff at people because of their military might and their allies, but all of that stuff is falling apart because these other superpowers are getting together, building alliances to cut America out of the pie. And that's because the Lord is bringing these devils down. It says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai. And Salaki, this wasn't the actual chapter I wanted to get to, but that's a good chapter to go into dealing with Esau. What I wanted to get to was Malachi, the first chapter. My bad. Malachi 1:1. The burden of the word of the Lord to Israel by Malachi. I have loved you, saith the Lord. Yet you say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith the Lord? Yet I loved Jacob and I hated Esau, and that has not changed to this very day. The Lord, you know, hates Esau. But the Lord loves us. That's why we're in the condition that we're in, getting jacked up like this, because it's a form of correction, chastising. It says, and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. Excuse me. Whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down. And nobody can build like Esau builds. You know, you see how they build. And that's why it says that their habitation is high in Obadiah. So yeah, technically it went with the scripture. So their habitation is high, and they're the ones that build. When you go back to the Roman Empire, the Romans were building many monuments back then, and even Herod, who was an Edomite, and everyone knows that he was an Edomite, he was even building because he was being hired by the Romans, by Caesars and all of that, to build for them. You know, he was actually building buildings for them. He's the one that restored the temple. He's the one that built all those different buildings back then. You know, there's a whole host of buildings that he built. You know, so Esau can build, and you can see it in today, you know, today's standard. You know, it's in certain cases they build through you know, through what's the word I'm looking for? Trial and error, right? Because they'll build certain bridges, and the bridge doesn't work out, so they come back and they'll build it, and it'll work. Like there was a bridge I believe they built out. This was like years, I forget what year that was. I believe it was out in Washington somewhere, and the winds came and tore that whole bridge down. You know, so when they went to go build the San Francisco, that bridge in San Francisco, they had experience, and they pretty much designed it so that it could withstand winds, it could withstand the waters, the waves, and all of that, and it's still standing to this very day. You know, so you can't tell me these devils can't build. They don't understand the dynamics of building. So the scriptures don't speak about Japheth doing this, Japheth building. It speaks about Esau building. It speaks about Esau being the end of the world. You know, it speaks about Esau being here when Yahushua comes back. Not that the Medes are not here, or that the Japhet is not here. The Japhetic people are here, but they're not the ones that Yahushua is coming to visit. You know, and there's nowhere in the scriptures that it identifies the Japhetic people as being the wicked. But when we read down in Malachi, right, whereas Edom says, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them, meaning the Edomites, the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord had indignation forever. So they're known as the border of wickedness. They are the wicked. There's no other. I mean, you have wicked among the nations. You have wicked among Israel. The Israelites have become, certain Israelites have become more wicked than the wicked, but there is a wicked people on the planet, and that would be the Edomites. Now, the scriptures say, and you're not going to find anywhere where it identifies, you're not going to find anywhere where it identifies the Japhetic people as being the wicked. You're not going to find that, because it doesn't exist. And you're not going to find where they can build, you know. They're not the builders of the planet. The Lord made the Edomites these builders. That's why the world fashions themselves around the buildings of Esau. You know, you had the Greeks, and you had the Romans, and today you have America, you know. And from America, this is where all these other nations today around the world that have skyscrapers, that's where they got the idea from. Okay? So Job 9:24 says the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. See? So the earth being given into the hand of the wicked, who are the wicked should be your next question. And when you look at the planet, who is governing? Who are the people following after? You know, they're following after the so-called white men, which are the Edomites. And the Edomites are identified as the wicked. So if the Edomites are identified as the wicked, and the earth is given into the hands of the wicked, and Esau is the end of the world, and when Yahushua comes back, the people that he's going to visit are the Edomites, then the people that are in rulership, beginning with the small hats, these are the Edomites that are going to be in power. And this is why, you know, they, you know, these small hats, they'll call the Ishmaelites or the Arab people, they'll call them Edomites. They'll call those Palestinians, they'll call them Amalek, you know, different Edomites. You know, but you'll never hear vocab speak about that, telling them that, well, no, you're wrong about that because the Edomites are done away with. You'll never see him speak against them. They're teaching that the Edomites are still here because they're calling those Palestinians Amalek. They, you know, when you go to the Blue Letter Bible and other sources, they'll say that the so-called Arab people are Edomites. They'll say the Nabateans are Edomites. So how come you don't have anything to say about them? Because you're an apologist for the small hats. All right? So nowhere in the script, so no, the Japhetic people are not the Edomites. They're not the so-called, the Japhetic people are not the so-called white people. The so-called white people are Edomites. You know, and we always say this, that you have among so-called white people, you have Israelites that look like them. Okay? So it's not a skin color thing or color thing. It's a spirit thing. Whoever your father is going back in the history. You know, because if you look like a so-called white man, but your father and your father's father's father going all the way back are so-called black men or so-called Latino men or so-called Native American Indian men, then you're an Israelite that just happen to look the way you look. And to get a good example of that, all you have to do is look at Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin's father, which is a Haitian, a so-called Haitian, a Levite, he is super dark. He married a so-called white-looking woman. They had their son, Blake Griffin, right, a top basketball player. He looks like a very light-skinned Jake, red hair and all of that. I believe he has freckles, you know. And then he married a so-called white-looking woman, and his son came out looking like a little white boy with blonde hair, straight blonde hair. But that little boy is an Israelite because his grandfather is an Israelite and his father is an Israelite. You see? And that's one part of also part of the mysteries of the Gentiles, and also part of in the book of Habakkuk where it says, I work in your days that you will not believe though it be told you. You see? So all of these things are coming to pass even to this very day. You'll see in a lot of Israelites looking like these different nations, and you can tell by the flavor. You know, so it's not just a thing of a so-called person is a so-called white person that they're Edomite. You have to qualify that. You have to find out where they're from. That's why you ask questions. You know, where are your people from? You know, are they from Ireland? Are they from Scotland? Are they from France? Are they from Britain? Where are they from? Germany? You know, and then you narrow it down. So, and at the end of the day, you say, well, if your father was a so-called white man and you're an Edomite, you know, like if you was an Edomite, you're an Edomite. But if your line happens to go back to the so-called black people that ruled Europe, you know, during the time of the Byzantine Empire, then you're an Israelite. And you have a lot of Gadites that were brought out there too, back to so-called Europe and Asia and those areas. So you have a lot of Gadites out there, you know, that might look like so-called white people, but they're Israelites. You know, so this thing is heavy. So no, the Japhetic people are not so-called white people. The so-called white people, inside joke, they are the Edomites, biblical Edomites. So with that, I pray that you brothers and sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.